Hello, and welcome to One Good Scene, the series where we break down our favorite and least favorite
I don't like sand.
pieces of media and try to find one good scene. The first film we're going to be discussing is one that has been talked about ad nauseum on the internet, Netflix's live-action adaptation of Death Note, widely considered to be one of, if not the worst Western anime adaptation of all time. So I have tasked myself with breaking down everything in the film that doesn't work and trying to find something good within this very bad movie. The film opens with a slow motion sequence that is already insisting on how cool the movie is, and within 1 minute of screen time they have already mischaracterized the main character. While I'm willing to concede that some things must be changed in an American adaptation of a foreign work in order for it to make sense in the eyes of most American viewers, they completely change who Light is as a person. Light Yagami in the original Death Note series was never depicted in the way that Light Turner is depicted in the Netflix adaptation. Turner is an edgy loner type who comes off as obnoxious and unsuccessful, with no goals or aspirations until he begins to use the book. The first time we see him, he is selling another student answers to an assignment, already showing a state of low moral values and immediately makes it hard to see him as worthy of the notebook. Meanwhile, Light Yagami is portrayed as an intelligent student with a caring family and high hopes for his future. Having a level head, as well as being intelligent, allows one to side with Light Yagami and feel as if he may even be worthy of the power of a death god. Even if Light in the original manga never received the book, his life probably would have been fine, but besides his implied intelligence in the Netflix version, he really has nothing going for him. This scene also introduces us to Light's soon-to-be mass murderer GF, Mia, a completely different character compared to Misa of the original work. In this continuity, she is a cheerleader with an I don't give a fuck attitude, expressed not so subtly in her openly smoking on school grounds during football practice. Her character being changed entirely in this version makes at least a little bit more sense, with the film only bolstering an hour and 40 minutes worth of runtime. Trying to introduce her as a model with her own version of the note as well as the shimigami eyes would be very difficult, not even mentioning how her obsession for Light, if adapted correctly, may come off as a sexist portrayal of women in the eyes of American audiences. So instead of having any artistic integrity and coming up with a completely new character without a derivative name, or showing respect to the source material and trying to find a way to make her character work, they instead write a completely different character but keep the name close enough to draw in fans of the source material. While this is not only a scummy move to get people to watch the movie, it certainly isn't helped that her character is basically just a plot device. She does all of the evil things with the book that Light doesn't want to do, absolving him of all evil, and by the end of the movie, the only innocent person he really kills was his school bully. Then, a storm starts, and for some reason literally everyone disappears, and no one sees the massive book that falls to the ground right in front of Light. Running from the rain causes Light to run into a nerd getting picked on by some very over-the-top and cartoonish bullies. And the edgy girl from earlier tries to step in and gets manhandled, causing Light to become the most hilarious white knight ever.
Hey, don't touch her! Hey, I don't need your help, okay?
You got held back, didn't you, Kenny? Twice, I think?
You think that's funny?
No, I think it's very sad, actually. I only mention it because that would make you over 18, which means that if you were to beat me up, which I'm sure you could, it would technically be child abuse.
So if you don't want to wind up on some kind of registry, I suggest you back the fuck.
This is the type of character that Nat Wolff may seriously be incapable of playing. He doesn't come off as scary or tough in any way, just obnoxious and bratty, which may be the purpose of this scene, but his line deliveries here feel too unintentionally hilarious to think this was the direction they legitimately wanted to go in. He then gets in trouble and we get fed an exposition dump regarding his dead mother and supposed behavioral issues. Light then reads a section from his manifesto about the principal having an opportunity to take care of the bad people at his school.
You have the chance to stop the type of people who make things hard for everybody. You gotta see the big picture here.
He gets sentenced to 2 weeks of detention, and then finally decides to look inside the book and gets the same breakdown of the rules that basically every other version of this story has. Then the lights turn off and Ryuk just starts fucking with him by rolling marbles along the floor and throwing shit around in another unintentionally hilarious sequence.
Shall we begin?
Then, he looks out the window and sees a girl getting harassed in front of the school by one of the bullies who messed with him before, and decides to kill him out of vengeance in a gory sequence that I definitely cannot show on YouTube. Now at this point, we're over 10 minutes into the movie, and it kinda seems like the script has no idea where it's going to go. There's been no declaration that Light will use his newfound power to clean up the evil in the world. He literally just used the magic book to murder a teenager in broad daylight because he punched him in the face and got him put in detention. This is the kind of escapist fantasy that a 14-year-old who just watched the Death Note anime for the first time would write about themselves. We're this far in, and basically every sequence has contained something that lacks subtlety to a degree where you roll your eyes, or is hilariously acted. Now these things might sound like nitpicks, but remember, this entire movie is only an hour and 40 minutes long, and is already planning on cutting elements and plot beats from the original Death Note story out, and it basically has nothing good to show for it. Not a single element of the first 10 minutes of this movie has evolved or positively changed anything about the beginning of the original Death Note story, and if you haven't experienced the original Death Note anime or manga, by this far in, you may already be bored or uninterested into what happens to our edgy simp of a main character. He then has an awkward dinner with his dad, who is a police officer that in Light's eyes did nothing to stop his mom from being murdered. Willem Dafoe scares him again, so Light gives him an apple, resulting in an obnoxious jump scare, and then Ryuk gives a well-acted but obvious exposition dump regarding the rules of the book. What follows is a sequence where he writes the name of his mother's killer in the book in another act of vengeance. Now this next sequence kind of boggles my mind. Light's dad comes in and happily delivers the news that his wife's killer died, and talks about her being kind of a hippie, and now he agrees with her that karma really is a bitch. Light apologizes for the mean things that he said, and only now seems like he has the seeds planted for his mission of removing evil people from the world. It's after this sequence where he reveals the note to his big titty goth girlfriend, and the killings really start picking up. And unlike the anime, we don't get any internalized speeches about his drive to rid the world of crime, so as an audience member, you have to assume that he made the illogical jump from using the book only for revenge, to seeing his dad happy that a criminal died, and just decided to do more of that? This version of Light is an absolute dumbass with no moral compass. Some asshat at his school that made fun of him is just as equally as deserving of death as the guy who fucking killed his mom. Not to mention the fact that as of this scene in the school gym, he has opened the Death Note in 2 public places so far where it would be really easy for someone to see it. He then tries to use the Death Note to score some pussy in another awkwardly acted sequence that also breaks the continuity. Light tells Mia to check the last entry in the book, then she reads out the entry that killed Kenny the bully. This scene happens after Light has already killed the man who murdered his mother, either meaning that Mia cannot follow direct instructions and read the wrong entry, or the scriptwriters completely forgot about the previous scene when writing this one.
Read the last entry.
Kenny Doyle decapitation?
Then, they watch a news stream of an active hostage situation on his Epic gaming laptop, and he puts the criminal's name in the book with a specific set of instructions as to how he will die. This makes Mia start to act like she's interested in Light and encourages him to work with her to change the world using the book. He stammers and acts confused, either because he hadn't previously thought of using the book to stop crime, or because he was shocked his incredibly manipulative plan to get his dick wet actually worked. What follows is another artsy, slow-motion sequence that cuts to people being murdered and Light and Mia having sex, and it really makes it seem like murder is just their deranged form of foreplay. This is the kind of relationship dynamic that only edgy teenagers would pretend to have, and yet it somehow slipped its way into this fucking script. During this sequence, they solidify the name of Kira as the entity responsible for these murders. We are then introduced to our antagonist, L, who despite looking very little like the L from the original anime, even in wardrobe, is honestly quite well acted. The basic character traits align with the real L, and throughout the film he does seem like an agoraphobic creep with a sweet tooth and a soft spot in his heart for Watari, and an IQ high enough to handle an international murder case, which just makes this version of Light seem even worse by comparison. Watari then confronts Light's father and tells him that L would like to speak with him regarding the Kira investigation. L tells him that he specifically wants his help because he may have personal ties with the suspects, and that the name Kira was an intentional misdirect to make the FBI believe that he is operating out of Japan. While I wouldn't classify this as the one good scene, simply due to its short length and lack of complexity, I will say that this is a decent justification for the story taking place in the United States and serves as a setup for how Light and L will eventually cross paths later.